Hi everyone, welcome to week 7. Feels like it's been a couple weeks, but we're in week 7 now. We only have a few weeks left. We have this week, and then week 8 is our final week together for our online course. So welcome to week 7. By the time you view this video, most likely you've turned in your argumentative synthesis essay. So that's what we've been building up to, right, this quarter. And that was the big project, right? So we're kind of winding down toward the end of the quarter. We have a few things left, but the focus for week 7 is going to be the visual remediation. And the visual remediation project, it's visual, exactly like the title says. So that's what I want to focus on for this video, is just talking a little bit about what you have to do for the visual remediation and show you some samples that you can view on Canvas also. So for week 7 on Canvas, you're going to be seeing the video here. The remediation slides, there are some slides that accompany the prompt, so check those slides out. I'm going to pull those up in a minute. What's due this week is we have the synthesis reflection, and I do want to add, if you need some more time on that one, past August 7th, it's okay as long as you submit it sometime during this week. It's okay if it's a little late, because I know that there's some other things going on. And then the visual remediation, you're posting that one by August 9th, and then August 11th is when your responses are due. So a lot of things coming up this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So keep an eye on those due dates and the calendar as well. As for resources, we're going to start with the prompt for the visual remediation, just so we can look at some examples and see what those requirements are. So this project is worth 100 points. It requires the use of 3 or more sources that you use in your essay, and then you're looking for one outside source about genre conventions, because a big thing with visual remediation is talking about how these conventions of whatever visual medium you choose, why do those conventions matter in terms of why you chose that medium. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. So there are 2 parts. So part 1 for this project is after you submit your essay, you're going to turn your same topic, so you're using that same argumentative research topic, and you're turning it into a visual format for a new audience. So think about who your audience was for the for the argumentative synthesis essay. I had asked you back during the project proposal, right? Who is your intended audience? Who would benefit from this information? You're choosing a new audience that could also benefit from it. So maybe if your essay ended up being more of an academic audience or field professionals, people that work in a certain field, whatever, you're choosing a new audience, and it doesn't necessarily need to be as formal of an audience. So for example, sometimes I have people that they want to target families or they want to target children or college students, right? So it can be a little bit more specific in terms of what audience that you want to reach. And then what you're doing is you're determining who the new audience is, and then what sort of visual format would work best to reach them, right? Because an academic level paper, that's not usually something for general public or for a more specific audience like families or children or something like that. So you're choosing a new way to get that information to them. So I want you to consider, again, who else would benefit from the information in your paper, what other group of people, and then after you choose that audience, you're turning it into a visual format. So here are some examples of formats I've received in the past. Infographics or posters, and these are all digital. You can create them on Canva. Another website I recommend is Piktochart. There are a ton of other websites you can use for creating infographics and posters, but Canva is probably my #1 choice for that. A pamphlet or a trifold. So if you think about like a brochure that you get at an office, you can make a pamphlet. There is a sample on Canvas for one of those. You can create a website, so like a blog or a website, social media page. So last quarter I had someone they created an Instagram page for whatever their topic was, and they had like 6 posts that you could go through and read. It was informational. I had someone else do on Instagram now you can do like a story, right? So they did like a series of stories that would appear on an Instagram page or something like that. You can do a video ad, other sort of video format. Many other examples that I have in the slides that we're going to look at in a second. So I just want you to think about what medium would help reach your audience. And that visual project, no matter what you choose, you're utilizing at least 3 sources, but you also have to find one more source for part 2. So for part 2, after you create the visual project, you're going to write an intro paragraph. It's just one paragraph explaining the choices that you made. So basically, I want you to explain why did you change it in the way you did in order to reach this audience. And you have to find one outside source about genre conventions. So for example, there's a sample paragraph as well on Canvas, but for example, let's say you choose to do a brochure, right? You're going to want to find a source online about where do you normally see brochures? How are they normally made? What sort of information do they normally have in them? What are those conventions? Okay. And then again, just make sure everything is formatted well. Look for typos no matter what sort of visual project you create. Check for typos. But essentially what we're doing is experimenting with different composing processes using a variety of technologies, and then you're seeing how the conventions of a certain genre affects the audience, right, in terms of reaching them. And then here are those slides that I have. They're linked at the bottom there. You can find them on the prompt or on Canvas as well. But we're going to take a look at the slides next. All right, so let's dive a little bit more into it. I'm gonna go through these slides pretty quickly because this is essentially what the prompt is saying. So go through these, right? There's two parts, the actual remediated project and then the intro paragraph. What are genre conventions? So if you're wondering what exactly that means, a convention is an agreed upon way that something's normally done, spoken or unspoken. So I mentioned some of the you're looking for a source, and I mentioned some examples for a brochure. But think about posters, right? So a convention for posters could be that it's normally a mix of pictures and text. They're usually hung somewhere specific in terms of where they can be seen by a target audience. So you'll want to think about how are things normally completed, right? Then here's an example of an infographic. So let's say you want to make an infographic. There's a source on here if you want to click it. It's from Venngage. That's another website that you can use to create infographics, by the way. I don't know a lot about Venngage, but I have had people use that one before. But anyway, so some conventions of infographics. Normally there's a visual component. It's not cluttered. You're using a certain level of appropriate language. This article calls infographics actionable. So there's like a logical flow of information and storytelling elements included in there as well. I also think it's important to distinguish between genre. So what is genre? It's a type of writing. So for example, we're doing an argumentative synthesis, right? Whereas a medium is the way that that is delivered to someone. So genre and medium are both determined by audience and purpose. So for example, a horror film, right? Horror is the genre, film is the way that that genre is being delivered, and so on. So essentially, you're not necessarily changing the genre, right? You can still be argumentative, but you're changing the medium of how is it being delivered to your new audience, right? So you get to choose. So for the introduction paragraph, I have a list of questions on here that you'll want to answer in that intro paragraph. So who is your audience? What is the topic? Why did you make those changes? And why is the new medium better for the new audience? Okay, so take a look at these questions a little bit more in depth as well. Here is my longer list of examples. So here are some mediums I've received in the past. I've had people do comic strips, music video, other video format. I have TED question mark here. If you do like a TED talk, I've had people interested in doing that in the past too. A map, if that's relevant, a board game or other sort of game, poster or trifold, children's book, bumper stickers, social media, website. There are so many different options that you can choose from for this. I want to leave it pretty open-ended, but I do want to say the thing in red down here, you cannot do a PowerPoint presentation. So you've already done an electronic presentation on this topic that you submitted on discussion board and you got to respond to some other students. You do not get to do a PowerPoint again. So no PowerPoint presentations for your remediation. It's a different sort of visual format. All right, some things to keep in mind: the rhetorical situation. If you watched that review video on rhetoric, you're considering all these elements. Who is it intended for is the big one, right? So who is the audience? And then I'm going to leave you with this if you want to view these examples on your own time. It's kind of some funny examples I show during my in-person quarter class as well. But Shia LaBeouf, there are a lot of examples of him in different media that I have here linked for you if you want to check them out. So for example, there's a song that was created about him and it became a video, it became a stage production, and then there were a lot of other projects. So he did this green screen project. I can't remember the year, 2015, I think. Yeah, 2015. It was intended to be remediated right into these other formats, and so there are a lot of things that happen with that. So check those out if you're interested. Please go through these slides a little bit more in depth just to look at some of those examples. But that's what their visual remediation is. Some other things on Canvas that you'll notice: there's a sample intro paragraph. So there are comments on here from me. This writer chose to split up her paragraph into two because she had a lot to say about why she wanted to make these changes. So go check out that sample paragraph on there. Some other things I have, let's go back, are some actual example remediation. So there's a brochure, an infographic, and another infographic. We're just going to look at one of them together. Let me pull it up. So this student, their research was about space funding, and their argument was why we should be putting more funding into space exploration or NASA in general. And they did this really nice infographic about the history of, what's been happening with NASA and sort of the benefits that we've received from their research. So check out some of these samples. They're pretty good. The other thing that you want to make sure to submit with your remediation is your references page. So like I said, you have to use at least 3 sources from your research. You're just going to submit that with your project. So it can go with your intro paragraph as well. But you'll want to make sure you can integrate your sources into your visual remediation somehow. So actually, let's look at this brochure because I think this one's a good example of how it does that. So here is their brochure. And again, for a trifold, it's kind of different. I have to imagine what it would look like if it were actually printed and folded. It'll look a little odd viewing it online, but I'm not asking you to print anything out totally online class, right? So you're doing it totally online. But this one's a good example of they had sources integrated. You'll notice right here, Brown 2019, Meyer and Noster 2017. So they had some sources integrated into their project, which you'll want to make sure to do and have citations as well. Let's go back to the module. I think that was it. So if you have any questions though about visual remediation, I hope these samples help clarify what I'm looking for here, but essentially you're just trying to reach a new audience with the same information from your essay, right? But you're tailoring it to this new group of people that you think this information could also benefit in some way. Okay, so again, let me know if you have any questions about the visual remediation. If you'd like to see more samples, I might be able to dig some up, but please send me an email. And good luck with everything during week 7.